Hey there, everyone. It's Kelly from Kelly's Astrology here. And in this video, I want to talk a little bit about the full moon or lunar eclipse coming up in Scorpio in the middle of May. This is a fairly dramatic eclipse. I think all eclipses have a little bit of drama in them, but this one feels especially potent or strong. This total lunar eclipse could bring a fair amount of drama, and it's also likely to stir up a lot of your deep emotions. You'll likely feel pretty intense, and you might need to take some time away from your regular activities to process your emotions or even perhaps work through some healing. I'm going to share a few thoughts and insights about the upcoming eclipse in Scorpio, and we'll take a look at that in the astro chart as well. Before then, I'd like to mention my astrology classes, webinars, and most importantly, my astrology training program. I offer astrology training on a variety of topics from beginner to intermediate through to advanced or practitioner level. My beginners astrology class is going to be starting very soon, next month in June, in fact. So let me take you very briefly over to my website for a moment where you can see what this looks like. And I'll just show you where you can sign up for any of those courses if you're interested. And then we'll get into talking more about that very potent eclipse in Scorpio. So here's where you can find info about my astrologer training program. The URL or web link you want to go to is kellysastrology.com/astrologer training program. And you can see that all the different courses that are involved in that training program. There's some FAQ info if you need more details. You can get started now, but we do have our next live cohort coming up in June. And if you're not interested in the full training program, but you would just like to take a class or two here or there, maybe you've got some particular topics that you're interested in, there's heaps of courses on the Learn Astrology section of my website, or you might want to browse the classes, and that'll take you through all the different webinars and courses that are available. Be sure to tab through the different pages at the bottom of the page because there are lots to choose from. So that's just a small sample. So if you're interested in learning more astrology, I'd love to see you in class soon. But for now, let's dive into talking about this very strong and very emotional lunar eclipse. So first, let's get the technical details out of the way. This eclipse is a full moon or lunar eclipse. It is a total eclipse, which usually means the new or full moon is very close by degree to the nodal axis, which is the case here. And you'll see that when we get the chart up shortly. The eclipse is happening at 25 degrees Scorpio on Monday, May 16 in most major time zones. So we will be feeling the energy of this eclipse for 1 to 2 days before the eclipse itself. So even though the eclipse is happening on Monday, May 16, it is likely to be impacting your experiences and your day-to-day life on the weekend before, just to give you a heads up about that. So it is a full moon eclipse, and this eclipse has the moon near the south node in Scorpio. So a full moon tends to be a time of heightened emotions anyway, and this full moon is happening in the water sign of Scorpio. So straight away we have this kind of double emotional signature. And the full moon tends to be about release, can be about things reaching a peak or a culmination. It can be this sense of coming into the thick or the height of something, but it's different from the new moon where we tend to want to start new things. The South Node is also a point to do with release, endings, letting go. It has this quality of sort of surrendering into the emptiness or surrendering into the nothingness. And so with the full moon near the South Node, this kind of highlights stuff that we need to let go of. And one of the big themes that I'm holding or making space for as I work through this lunar eclipse myself is, what is it that I need to let go of? What emotional stuff, perhaps from my past or from an old wound or pain, is maybe congested inside me that I need to heal, release, process, maybe integrate, but I certainly need to get something moving and then to have it released. And so this lunar eclipse in Scorpio on the South Node feels very much like finding a way to pass things through you that have have been stuck or that you've been holding on to for quite some time. So before we get the chart itself up on the screen, I just want to take you through a few of the keywords and concepts that I'm working with for this lunar eclipse. It does feel like it is an eclipse about endings. So it's a great eclipse if you want to make a break, cut ties, kind of clean the slate. So if you're looking to do any kind of detox or decluttering, if you want to purge or purify, whether that's your internal space, your emotional landscape, your feelings, you want to do some energetic work on your psyche or your energy field, this is a great eclipse just to do the releasing, not to do any drawing in. Anything that is about purging, that is about simplifying, rituals to do with mantra or, really simple, perhaps eating or lifestyle choices to kind of empty out, to create an expression in your life for a 24 or 48-hour period, which is about that quiet emptiness of the South Node. So there's a lot of emotional intensity here. So you may want to do some of that cleansing or decluttering or detoxing internally, but you might find you really need to do it in your space as well. So you might be decluttering your physical possessions. Because this is a water sign, we're really trying to get into what is it that nurtures us, or what is it that we really need? What are those core survival essentials? Now, it's not necessarily that we're craving them now or that we're going to get them at this eclipse, but we're trying to get clear on what is not nurturing for us, on what is congesting our space or our environment in a way that might be depleting us, that might be draining us, or might be that diminishing our vitality in some capacity. And so the detoxing and the decluttering under this particular Scorpio full moon eclipse near the South Node is about getting clear on what has become a little bit toxic or is draining or depleting you, and then figuring out how you can get it out of your life or your space, if you like. So we're talking about some big things and big themes with this lunar eclipse. There's so that strong desire to purge or detox. You might also feel as if you're called back to the past. The sign of Scorpio tends to hold on to things, and it's often where we store the memories of things that have hurt us, or a past betrayal, or a broken trust, or a broken agreement. And we might need to work through some of the residual emotion or energy about things that we've been through in the past, but might still be affecting us. So this is not necessarily saying, the difficult thing is going to happen on the eclipse, but rather that we sort of have a realization that there is stuff inside us that is acting to block or prevent us, living to our full potential, and it may be tied to events from the past. So under this eclipse, you might need to revisit something from the past so that you can release, you can recover, and then you can move forward. So there's a few themes. Of course, we're going to say more, but at this point, why don't we get the chart up on the screen and we can have a little look at the astro of everything. So I've got the chart for this eclipse timed to my location in Ontario. Of course, you can reset this chart for your location, but for our purposes now, we're really looking at the general themes of the eclipse. We're not really getting into house placements per se. I think the most important house placement for this eclipse for any of us will be the Scorpio house in our personal charts. So think about where you have Scorpio, which house has the cusp of Scorpio on in your personal birth chart. And that's an area of your life where you are ready to do this detox, this purge. You're ready to remove something that has become draining or depleting for you. Or perhaps you are ready to remove or disconnect or disengage from someone or something where you're starting to feel like you're out of integrity with yourself. And that's another important thing with the South Node eclipse for sure. So you can see the moon at 25 Scorpio and the node is at 22 Scorpio, just 3 degrees apart at the time of the eclipse. It does make it a total eclipse, which adds intensity into an already intense event. Remember that anytime we have a full moon or lunar eclipse, the sun and moon will be opposite each other in the sky, but it is the degree and the placement of the moon at the time of the eclipse that is the really energetically active part. So we want to think about the Scorpio topics and the Scorpio part of our birth chart. And so sort of the combination of it being the South Node and the sign of Scorpio, to me, clues me into this is about dealing with old emotions. So I think I've sort of clarified that, but if you need some help, this would be a great eclipse to make sure you're getting the healing or therapeutic support that you know is helpful for you. If you find you're struggling, particularly with some of those more uncomfortable emotions that we don't like to talk about, if you're feeling anger or rage or bitterness or resentment, if you're dealing with a betrayal of any kind, it may be that reaching out for some therapeutic support or help is just what you need to help you do that processing and releasing so that you can recover and move forward. The sign of Scorpio goes really, really deep. And most of us, if we don't have placements in Scorpio, we're often not aware of how deeply we might be affected by things, or we might have felt something. And so this kind of eclipse can have some surprises in it where we realize just how much that thing we've been through or we've dealt with, we've moved through it, it's in the past, but you might be realizing or just getting a bit of insight as to how much it's still affecting you. The moon also stands alone in the sky at the time of this eclipse. The moon is in this particular part of the sky right now where there are no other visible planets. And so the moon is normally lighting up this kind of dark part of the sky, but of course she will go temporarily dark as part of the eclipse experience. And so that temporary darkness, which is associated with every eclipse, is about going within. It's about kind of keeping your own counsel. It is about exploring some of those dark nooks and crannies inside our psyches that we usually don't have to even look at or acknowledge that they're there. If you think about the way, when we can see, when the light is bright, we just focus on what's most obvious. But when the light goes out or things are dark, we have that kind of internal subtle awareness really gets activated, and we can sort of put things together. We can explore things that we might not otherwise pay attention to in the bright, distracting light. So there's something in every eclipse about that idea of exploring the darkness, drawing on our subtle senses. And every eclipse, particularly this eclipse, it feels very destabilizing for health and vitality. And there's two technical reasons for that. The moon is happening, the eclipse is happening with the moon in the sign of her fall, and the moon at the time of the eclipse is on the South Node. Both of those things can diminish the protective, life-giving powers of the moon. And so health issues or physical concerns perhaps intensify with their symptoms, or we might realize there's something we need to address with our physical body. The disruptive energy, which is all so every eclipse has this quality of disruption and chaos. And that is really heightened, particularly about our regular routines, things that keep us grounded and centered. They're all kind of up in the air at the moment. I always think about eclipses as a pattern breaking type of astrological event, because an eclipse is, it normally would have a regular full moon, but now we've got this eclipse and the light that's normally there isn't going to be there. So it is about the disruption or the interruption, the temporary disruption or interruption, I should say, of a regular pattern. And so the things that you normally rely on or can reach out for support may not be available for you now. So that might prompt you a little bit of a review or a rethink. Do I want to go back to the same kinds of supports that I've had in the past, or is this a chance to explore something new? I don't think we want to explore something new on the day before or the day of the eclipse, but in the days and weeks following, we might have had an insight during the eclipse that we want to put into play. On the day of the eclipse, so that is May 16, it looks like it is going to be very late on the 15th if you're in the Pacific time zone in the US and Canada. But if you're in the East Coast time zone, like I am, it's very early in the morning on the 16th. And therefore, if you're in places like Australia, the UK, Europe, it will be later in the day on the 16th. So I would say May 15 and May 16, the eclipse energy is in play on those 2 days very, very strongly. And so we want to get quiet. We want to put ourselves on like a mini retreat. We want to be a little bit of a hermit, hibernate a little bit. We want to rest. We don't want to think about being productive. We don't want to think about starting things. Maybe we're doing some purification rituals, having a fire or writing things down and burning them. We might be doing a salt bath of some kind. We might be doing a little bit of a lighter eating strategy just to allow that kind of clearing physically. Of course, whatever choices you want to make, do check out with your health professional. But the idea here is that we want to get still, we want to get quiet, and we kind of want to, not do a lot of things because we don't want that eclipse energy that's really messy and disruptive. We don't want that to go in to any of the projects or the experiences or the events that are so important to us. So we want to kind of just retreat a little bit so that we're not interacting in the way the moon is not interacting in her usual manner during the eclipse. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the main themes to do with the eclipse: the pattern breaking, the need to release old emotions, the need for purging or detoxing or decluttering. What I want to do now is to switch focus and talk a little bit about the ruler of the eclipse, which is Mars, the traditional ruling planet of Scorpio. And at the time of the eclipse, Mars is conjunct Neptune in Pisces. And that reinforces the watery themes because we have the full moon in a water sign, and now we have the ruler Mars also in a water sign, which just adds more emotion, but it also adds a bit of a muddled, kind of confused energy because Mars is not just in Pisces, but is with Neptune in Pisces. So there is this sort of flood of emotion or this overwhelming quality of really strong, dramatic feelings that can come through at this eclipse. It's almost like you've just got too many big or strong emotions coming at you all at once. And so we're going to have this muddled feeling. We might be prone to mistakes or mix-ups. There's a forgetful quality, and there's also this really lethargic, tired, perhaps even exhausted quality, which is another reason why, in addition to the general kind of eclipse advice of laying low, getting still, going quiet, I think that's really important. This eclipse looks quite zapping from a physical energy perspective. And so, it's not a Sunday, Monday, the 15th and 16th. We don't really want to be doing any extreme sports. We don't want to be having major family or social events. So we're going to have to deal with people that we know are difficult or uncomfortable for us to navigate anyway. So we want to kind of get quiet and get still to the extent that we can, and to know that there is a lot of feeling and sensitivity, not just from the eclipse in Scorpio with the South Node, but also because the ruler of the eclipse, Mars, is with Neptune in Pisces at the time of the eclipse. Another interesting quick note on the kind of aspect vibes or themes, influences is the best word, sorry, the more professional word, is that the sun and moon are both navigating a square to Saturn as they're participating into this eclipse. And so there is a bit of a heaviness, there can be a melancholy feeling, there can be a realization that boundaries haven't been set or upheld, and now we're dealing with the consequences. There may be that need to kind of say no to something where you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or somebody is maybe unfairly, taking from you or using something that you would otherwise be offering. So it feels quite complex, quite uncomfortable, quite unsettling, this eclipse. It feels a little bit swampy. We're having to go into some of that messy old stuff to try and make our way through, to connect with it so that we can release it. So I don't think this is an eclipse that feels great. I definitely had a much more positive spin on the previous eclipse in Taurus. This one does feel like it's got that messy, muddled feeling. It's also got that kind of quality of exhaustion and depletion, both emotionally and physically. Now, one final thing to say about the South Node. In some of the traditional approaches to astrology, the South Node is associated with things like spirituality. And so when we have a strong South Node signature coming forward, we're incredibly subjective. It's like we're a belly feeling all those emotions without any logic, no rational sort of approach. So we've kind of, lost our heads a little bit. We're not going to be thinking clearly. We're all going to be reacting a little bit from that primal animal part of ourselves. And that can bring us in touch with some powerful forces that can clarify things, or that can help us shift things, that can help us be aware of emotion and reclaim our power. But it can also, mean that we're not thinking clearly. So big decisions would be something to avoid, the evening of the 15th or any time on the 16th of May. We just want to give ourselves the chance to not, to try and protect ourselves so that we don't commit ourselves to something, or we don't take on something that we later might regret or end up wanting to remove ourselves from that situation. So this idea of the South Node being connected to spiritual practices and not being a rational, logical piece can clue us into the importance of kind of simple ritual to do with release, or even just emotional centering around this time. If you are feeling a real lack of that divine or mystical connection in your life, this eclipse might help reactivate that for you. And there may be something specifically about the topics of the Scorpio part of your birth chart where you feel like you've got swept up in ambitions, or wanting to accumulate, or kind of keep up with, whatever 21st century life says you should be doing about the topics of the Scorpio part of your chart, about those house topics for you. And you might find you want to make some kind of countercultural, or against the grain choices, not to make a point or to have a rebellion, but so that you can stay in alignment with your own spiritual integrity. So that's sort of a undertone to this eclipse that may be relevant for some of you, depending on where you are in your own kind of spiritual, philosophical journey. So if we were to summarize, we've got a big dramatic total lunar eclipse coming up in that very private but very deeply feeling sign of Scorpio. And in Scorpio, it's the only water sign ruled by Mars. And so here we're dealing with those emotions, water, that are agitating or unsettling, that are uncomfortable, that we perhaps don't want to talk about, even being angry. Sometimes even admitting that can be hard. And so under this eclipse, it's like everything comes out. We need to purge, we need to release, we need to write it down, we need to get it out in therapy. We need to kind of get things moving so that we can not be congested inside us. So if you've got any comments or questions about that Scorpio lunar eclipse, it is at 25 degrees Scorpio coming up on Monday, May 16. Let me know via the comments below. Of course, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just hit that little bell, and that'll make sure you get a notification every time there's a new video. And if you are interested in studying astrology, I hope to see you in class sometime soon. Until then, everyone, take care.